Welcome to Trail Manners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for Trail Manners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails, Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Hello and welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast, episode number 138. Today, our guest is Mr. Mike McKnight. The Trail Manners Podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. If you're so inclined, Trail Manners would really appreciate any contributions via our Patreon account at patreon.com/Trail Manners. This episode of the Trail Manners Podcast is sponsored by Hemp Daddy's Therapeutics. Hemp Daddy's is a full-spectrum CBD oil made from USDA organic hemp, grown on a family farm in Colorado. Hemp Daddy's is great for reducing inflammation, pain relief, better sleep, and a faster recovery. Go to hempdaddies.com to support the show and learn more. And don't forget to use code TRAILCBD for 10% off and free shipping. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome back to the Trail Manners Podcast. This is episode number 138. Today, we have got a special guest for you. We've tried to get him on the show earlier, and it just hasn't worked out, but we are happy and psyched to have fresh off his Antelope Island 100 win just a few weeks back, Mike McKnight. So, Mike, thanks for taking the time to join me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And temporary location here, right? We're in Logan-ish, right? I guess it's technically Logan here.
No, this is Logan.
Logan? Okay,
Yep.
We are in Logan, Utah,
Yep.
and used to be the Ultra mothership, right here, and it's slowly phasing to Denver.
Yeah, there's a few in Denver already, and the rest of us will be there by July.
Nice. So, we'll just get, so you work for Ultra, so we'll start there. I think a lot of people might know you from that realm, and you do events, sponsorships, things like that.
I'm the event and athlete manager, so over all of our sponsored events and our elite athletes.
Nice. So that seems like it'd be a pretty fun job, for the most part, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of planning that goes into it and coordination, but I mean, for a runner, you can't ask for a better job.
Yeah, there could be some worse jobs, right?
Yeah.
Out there. But yeah, so we've tried to get you on the show. I mean, kind of what, you've done a lot of the 200 stuff, right? I mean, that's still fairly new, I guess. But you've done a lot of that. But let's go back in time. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, so I'm 29 years old. I've lived here in the Logan area my whole life. Grew up on a dairy farm that's kind of on the outskirts of Logan, last town before you get to Idaho. And then I graduated from Utah State in 2016, which is when I started working at Ultra as well. Started in customer service and then got bumped up to this position and have been doing this for about 2.5 years now, and have an awesome wife and an awesome son, and just couldn't be happier with where we're at in life right now.
That's awesome. And then getting ready to move to Denver. Yeah,
I love Ultra and everything. I also love Logan, so it's pretty bittersweet.
Yeah.
I've legit lived here my whole life, so kind of mixed emotions, but I'm pretty passionate about Ultra and what I do for the brand, so it was a hard decision, but it ended up being the right decision.
Nice. That's good. So you say you started with Ultra in 2016. Have you always had a runner's background? Did you run like in high school, college, any of that stuff?
In high school, I ran track because they made us do track for football.
Okay.
So I had no interest in running at all in high school. And then when I got into college, I realized how expensive college was. So I started devising, scheming ways that I could get into or get cheaper
tuition.
Yeah. And one of those things was to get on one of the sports teams.
Where they kind of give you money, right?
Yeah. So I went out and just busted a mile one day, and it actually surprised me for how quick I was able to do it without training to do it. And so I started to train to run track for Utah State, and then broke my back, which I'm sure we might talk about sometime.
It's coming up.
It's coming up.
Now it is.
Yeah. But I broke my back, and that kind of, strangely enough, changed my running style. It actually fast-tracked me into ultra running, and I decided that I would rather spend money on college and end up doing a hobby and a sport that I like, whereas track, I didn't really care for the short sprint.
That was like going to be a job, essentially, right?
Right.
Working for money.
Right.
So that is fun.
Right.
So do you have a story with how you broke your back? I mean, did it happen on a dairy farm? No?
Cow kicked my back.
Yeah, something, I don't know. Stepped on, cow tipping went wrong. I don't know.
No, it was a cooler story than that, thankfully.
Oh, that's good.
This is at Beaver Mountain. It's a local ski resort that we have just up Logan Canyon.
Okay.
It's actually part of the Bear 100 course. The 75-mile mark of the Bear 100 is the ski lodge of Beaver Mountain. And so I was up there skiing and met a girl up there that I wanted to show off to.
That's how stories start.
I know. Her name was Candy, too, which is even better. And so I went and hit a jump that I've hit numerous times, but this time I decided to hit it without carving. So I just hit it dead on and completely overshot the landing. And as I was hitting the jump, I realized that I was going way too fast, so I panicked and started to lean back. So I launched off at the jump leaning back. It was an icy day, and I landed flat on my back and got an ambulance ride down to Logan Hospital, and I had a shattered vertebrae, which they said the way I landed, it burst outward, the vertebrae. So yeah, I don't know a lot of medical terminology or anything, but I just know if I landed a different way and it burst inward, it would have went into my spinal column and paralyzed me. So,
Wow.
So it's definitely a lucky outcome.
Wow. Well, so did Candy go to the hospital to see you?
No, never heard from her
Come
again.
on.
Yeah.
Candy, you let us down.
Yeah.
Now
She probably thought I was pathetic.
now she's a stripper in North Salt Lake.
Right.
That name. Well, so broken back, man. That's life changing. Whether you're paralyzed, obviously, is one thing, but still, what was that like? Because you're an active guy, right?
Yeah.
Football, running, skiing. What was that like?
It was rough. Well, in the moment it was rough, but the recovery time was pretty amazing for what they projected it would be. But when it happened, the doctor advised I drop out of school. I was in my second semester of college, and it was February, so luckily enough I talked to all my teachers, and they were able to incomplete my classes that semester, and just said that they would let me start up again whenever I'm feeling ready for it.
Yeah.
So deferred all my classes. I started a job like 2 days before that happened, which I ended up losing when they found out I would.
You weren't going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I lost my job. I had to drop out of college for the semester. Had to move home with my parents, and so it was kind of I was pretty upset for a lot of the time there. Wasn't really focusing on the fact that I should be considering myself lucky for not being paralyzed.
And how old were you at that time?
It's 2012, so I just turned 22.
Wow, so young.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I haven't discovered ultra running at this point, but I was starting to enjoy running. And I wanted to get on the track team at that point too. So the first thing I asked my doctor was when I'd be able to start running again. And he said, so this was February, and he said, if you recover fast, you should be able to start swimming in August, like do some low impact exercising. And then if everything goes well, and again, this is fast, you should be able to start running in about a year from now.
Wow. So
that was pretty hard to hear. A year sounds like a long time. So I moved home with my parents, and, it's an older style ranch home out on the farm. So there's one bathroom in the house, and their bedroom's right by it. So they moved out of their bedroom and gave me their bedroom, and took care of me. And obviously super grateful for that. At the time, though, it was a little humiliating that I was a 22-year-old college student that had to get taken care of by my parents.
Kicked them out of the room.
Right. Right. So, yeah.
And so what was your recovery like? I mean, did it take you a while to, you know, we're going to have some shows coming up talk about, this is way injury based, but mentally, was it harder for you to recover mentally, or were you kind of after a while like, nope, I'm focused now, let's get after this type thing?
It was more so the last of that, but the first few days to a week, I was in some pretty dark places, and part of my recovery was to walk a mile a day. That's what the doctor advised, and we have a picture of it now, and I laugh about it right now, but I had to borrow my grandma's walker.
Did it have tennis balls on it?
No, it had wheels. It was a little fancier.
Oh, that's nice. That's
yeah.
an upgrade.
And it had the seat so I could sit on it when I got too tired.
That's the kind of take to the grocery store.
Right? So that was part of my recovery. So the Cornish is where my parents are at and where I grew up, and it's like 200 people. You know, 2 houses next to each other are very uncommon, so there's just a lot of open spaces. So there's just this it was a mile long. I'd walk a half mile of it and turn around and walk back, but just go out and walk a mile a day, and it took over an hour just to walk that, just because of how much it hurt my back and how slow my legs were.
How quickly were you on your feet to walk? Was it like, how long did it take from the injury to when you started walking?
So I broke my back, had surgery the next day, and they inserted 2 rods and 9 screws, which I still have to this day.
Everything's still there?
Everything's still there, yeah. And then they fused part of my hip bone out to my spine too. So after the surgery, it took a day or two before, like, they had to put like a kind of, it makes me think of those oxen, the thing the oxen wear over their head, like a big belt kind of a thing. Like, they put a big belt on me and had to like help lift me up out of bed and link arms with me and help me walk around the hospital. So the first couple days after the surgery, it was really hard to walk.
Yeah.
By the time I got home, I mean, I was doing it like 3 days after surgery.
Wow, that's incredible.
But it took a lot of work like, my parents had to help me out of bed and had to help me down the stairs, and once I got outside, I had the walker to help me the rest of the way. So those first few days were really difficult for the walking, and aside from that mile walk each day, I caught up on all 8 Harry Potter movies and Lord of the Rings, all that good stuff. Didn't really do anything besides that. And then, so a lot of these are just guesses right now. There are 2 specific dates that I remember for sure, in terms of the time frame. But shortly after that, I started to want to. So this is, in retrospect, this is how I've realized that I've always had the mind of an ultra runner. As I started pretty quickly after that, trying to figure out my limits and pushing those limits. So I started, instead of a mile a day, I started doing 2 miles a day. And then I started trying to increase my time, and instead of an hour for a mile, dropping that to 45 minutes to 30 minutes, and moving up to the 2 miles, going for 2 walks a day. I just started feeling really good. I got rid of the walker, started using a cane, and I told my parents I felt comfortable moving back to campus, which was hard for them, but they trusted me. So I was living back in campus less than 2 weeks later after I broke my back. Yeah,
that's insane.
And I remember, because this was my life. Like, I didn't have school anymore. I didn't have a job anymore. So, I'd stay up late watching TV and then sleep in, wake up, and started walking 4 to 6 miles a day. I had a family friend that I would walk to their house and visit them, then walk home, and that ended up being 6 to 7 miles. And then 3 weeks after the surgery, so a few days after that, I started to get curious about running. And then I also wore one of those, like, the hard body braces for my back. My friends called it my Ninja Turtle shell.
Nice. You're like a superhero.
Yeah. So I would wear that every day, and even for this test trial with my run 3 weeks after I wore that back brace. But I went outside and jogged for half a mile, and I wouldn't call it excruciating pain. It was super uncomfortable, and I felt like the best way to describe it is I could just feel how heavy my back was from my rods.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that medically makes sense, but I could just feel that my back was different. And so, going back to the walking, increasing the walking times and distances each day, I jogged that half mile, and then the next day I jogged a mile. And 3 weeks after that, so 6 weeks post-surgery, signed up and ran a local 10K.
Now, let me ask you this. You were doing all this. What were people saying? Doctors, parents, were they aware of what you were doing?
Doctors were not.
They were not.
And they're still not.
We should tell them.
I know.
You could have been like the breakthrough guy.
I don't remember
right?
his name. My parents knew, and they were not happy at all.
Yeah.
And makes total sense. I probably wouldn't be happy either if my son did that.
Now that you're wiser.
Right.
Older and wiser.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, so they didn't know about it. The doctors didn't. And a lot of people on campus didn't know about it because I tried to wear baggy clothes and wore it over my brace so no one could tell something was wrong.
An MC Hammer pants.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
big old parka. So did you ever go back? Did you go back to the doctor, though, for checkups during that time frame?
Yeah, and he was amazed at how fast I was recovering. I never told him.
You didn't let him look at your Strava.
No, I didn't have Strava at that point.
I don't think there was. But,
yeah.
So he had no clue.
No clue.
Wow.
But it is fun because and this is kind of funny too in itself, but I got an invite to like a dinner a few months ago that a chiropractor sent out. And I guess this guy went into records at the hospital or something that would have been legal. I don't know if that's legal or not, but he somehow got my information and knew that I've had back issues. So I got invited to this dinner, and it was a free dinner, so me and my wife went.
Heck yeah, man.
It was at
date
Bluebird,
night.
too. Yeah, it was a good dinner. And we get there, and it's me and her with a room full of 60, 70-year-olds. It was pretty hilarious. But I told him about my story and showed him pictures of my x-rays and how much I ran, and he was blown away. And he's like, come and I'll do a free consultation because I'm pretty sure that you're messing your back up. So he took x-rays and everything and felt around in my back, and he's like, honestly, I want to get some money out of you, but your back's perfect. I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. So I don't know if that's contributed to the running or, having a younger body still, but it's nice to be able to tell people, especially my parents, that the running is not ruining my back.
So let me get this straight. If my back hurts right now, like lower back pain, I should just go sign up for some 200-mile races.
Yeah.
Because that's what you've done.
Yeah.
So I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I'll deal with the hurt back for a while longer. I think. So through that whole phase, when did you did the 10K? That was 2012-ish. When did you start getting into trail / your first ultra?
So it was later I was running 8 to 10 miles a day at that point just because I had nothing else to do. And it was all on the road because that's all I knew about. I knew there was hiking trails, but there were hiking trails. I didn't realize that people actually ran hiking trails. Yeah. And so I finally got a job at a company where I started working. I knew a guy there who knew I liked to run. And he introduced me to a local trail runner who you might have met. His name's Cody Draper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yep. Super good runner.
Yep, good guy.
Yeah. So we were talking, and he was telling me about his running, and I asked him if he was doing the local 10K that weekend. And he wasn't cocky at all. Cody's not cocky.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah. He kind of looked at me, and he goes, I typically don't do races less than a marathon. And that blew me away because I didn't know that it existed, that anything above a marathon existed. And at the time, he was training for the Scout Mountain Ultra.
Yep.
At the time, I think it was called the Pocatello 50. Yep. It was when they had a 50-mile ultra. So he was training for that, and that blew me away. And then he told me later that year he was doing the Bear 100, which blew me away. Because I know Bear Lake, I know Logan, and it just blows my mind that there's
people that run through that.
Yeah, through the mountains to Bear Lake. So he months would invite me to go running with him, but he intimidated me. So I turned it down all the time and showed him my typical runs. And I just remember he would always make fun of me and go like, there's like a trail right next to where you're running, right? I would run up Logan Canyon on the road.
Yeah.
He's like, there's a trail right next to you. It's a lot better.
There's not cars right there.
Right. So I finally joined him for a run and loved the trail running aspect. I paced him for the Bear 100, and he still gives me crap to this day, but it was like mile 45. It was muddy. His side was hurting, and he was just super miserable. And I was just like, I'm going to do this race next year. And just ever since then, I've been hooked.
He probably didn't like hearing that, right?
Right.
He's in a bad place.
He's like,
this
you're
looks
an idiot.
fun. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so what year was that, do you think?
So I paced him in 2012.
Oh, same year you broke your back.
So, yeah, I did my first ultra, and it was Jim Skaggs' event, the Logan Peak race, the next year in 2013.
So June. Okay.
And then did El Vaquero Loco a couple months after that. And then I ended up doing the Bear 100 in 2014.
Wow. So you jumped right into it.
Yeah.
I mean, you were like hooked, basically, is what we like to say.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, you got a taste of it, and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So let me jump into this then, because we've had guests on the show, Ben Light, Phil Lowry's, Harrison Fluman, others that have done 200 milers, and they're still in my head. Just I can't wrap my head around them. And I've been in the trail thing for a while, but the 200 mile just still cringes me. Right? I kind of dry, a little throw up in my throat.
Yeah.
But you hold the overall combined best time for the Triple Crown, right?
Mm-hmm.
You set that in 2017. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to give some numbers out, and then we'll jump into it because it still astonishes me because they're big. Their numbers are large, right? Yeah. So the first one was Bigfoot. You did that in 69 hours, 18 minutes, 20 seconds. Then you did Tahoe, 67 hours, 19 minutes, 20 seconds. And then Moab, and that's 238, 240-ish miles. I don't know why they call that a 200. It's like, give me every penny of that.
I think she finally changed it.
I hope so, because it's like, that's not a 200. 68 hours, 26 minutes, 38 seconds. So the combined overall best time that anybody can go out there and try for, 205 hours and 4 minutes and 18
Just
seconds.
over a week.
Yeah, exactly. Now those are 205 hours. I haven't ran that much for the year, right? So, jumping in, what made you decide to jump into a 200-mile race, first of all? Was 2017, what was the first 200? Was it 2017 or did you do one before that?
Bigfoot 2017 was my first 200.
First 200,
yeah.
Okay. And you just said, you know what? I've never done a 200, so I'm going to do all three of them, right? Because they space them out far enough, right? Month.
Right.
So what went into that jump from where you were before that to saying, hey, I'm going to go do all these?
So originally it wasn't going to be all three. At this point, I did 3 or 4 100s, and now I think it's stupid that I thought this, but I'm like, all right, I've done a few hundreds. What's next? And so I did some research and found the 200-mile distance and signed up for Bigfoot. And then I did some research, and at that time there was just the Double Crown, so there was no Moab.
Okay.
And DJ, he had the combined overall time for the Double Crown. And when I saw that, him and I have ran together, we've raced together, and him and I are very similar runners. And so when I saw he had that record, I started to get curious if I could take it from him. And so I reached out to him, and I talked a lot about what he had to do to prepare for a 200. And I had my heart set on doing Bigfoot and Tahoe. And then Candace announced Moab, and my desire dropped pretty quick. And so I called it good. I was just going to do Bigfoot. Ended up doing Bigfoot, and then after Bigfoot, I changed my mind.
So 69 hours, your first Bigfoot, where was that in placement of just that race? Like first, second, third, fourth, fifth?
Oh, that was so Ben and I came in on the track together, holding hands,
Gotcha.
doing that fun
Ben
thing.
Light, we had him on,
yeah.
Yep.
And so we came in at the same time, and I believe he got 6th, and I got 7th.
Okay.
So
after a 7th place 69-hour finish, 200 miles of nothing but happiness, you thought, let's do this again, right?
Yeah. So in Bigfoot, I had a lot of stomach issues for roughly the first 100 miles. It was terrible. I mean, I was crying. I was doing a lot of things that I never wanted anybody to see me do. And
this is a guy that is used to wearing a turtle shell with a walker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I was miserable. And backtracking a little bit, earlier that year, and so part of my role with Ultra is I'm the athlete manager, and earlier that year we drove the athletes to Zion to have a athlete summit.
Mm-hmm.
And on that drive, Jeff Browning was in the front seat with me, and it was my first time really meeting him. And I don't know if you've had the chance to interview him.
No, he's been on 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows Jeff knows keto.
Yep.
And so he started preaching keto to me on that drive, and it was a good 5-hour drive, and by the end of it, I was converted.
So on the way down, you were eating Pringles, gummy worms.
I had a Monster.
A Monster energy drink. On the way back, you had carrots, a whole stick of butter.
Yep. Pack of bacon. Yeah. So earlier that year, I started doing keto.
Okay.
Low carb, high fat, and did Bigfoot. After Bigfoot, I realized my mistake because Jeff and I met up and we talked, and he told me what I could have done better. But for the first 100 miles, my salt intake was off. I didn't realize that you lose more salt when you're doing that kind of eating style. And so I wasn't taking in enough salt, messed up my gut. And so after we chatted and he pointed that out to me, I started wondering what I could do at a 200 if I had my nutrition dialed down.
Yeah.
So, and this could be a whole other story in itself, but I remember during Bigfoot, I convinced my pacers, I convinced my wife that I was done running. Not for life, but I was going to take some time off after Bigfoot because of how miserable I was. I've told ultra runners, I've been in the same boat before. You always get to that, well, not always, but a lot of times you get to the point where you're done running.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've been there many times.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So people learn not to believe you when you say that, but I convinced my wife and everybody that I was done. I was done for a little bit. And this was a week later that I was eating breakfast with Jeff and drove home, walked into the door, and I was like, Sarah, what do you think of me doing the Tahoe 200 and probably the Moab 200? Because at that point, if I was going to do Tahoe, I wasn't going to do 2 of them and not do all 3 of them.
I mean, that's just logical.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, so she chuckled, and she wasn't angry, thankfully. But she was just like, I can't believe I trusted that you were done for a year and hasn't even been a week and you're ready to do the next one. So that's what ended up happening for me, and why I signed up for all 3 of them.
All right. So you can blame some of that on Jeff and keto.
Yes.
And working for Ultra.
Yes.
It's a vicious circle. So then you went down, you did Tahoe, and I know the courses are different. I mean, that's the last thing. I mean, especially at 200, it's like, oh, you PR'd by 2 hours, but it's a different course. But how'd you feel in that one?
Stomach felt great,
yeah,
but had other issues.
Like your legs were tired from 200 a month before, maybe? Or,
yeah,
that was one.
Not as tired as I thought they were, which was a plus. But no, about mile 67, I started having extreme IT band issues.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was miserable. And so from miles 67 to 120, I walked very slowly every single mile. Limp walking, just in complete pain. And aside from my back, it was in the top 5 incidences of where I felt the most pain in my life.
This one, candy broke your heart.
Candy
your back.
Yeah.
So those are 2.
Yeah, the back took a few of those spots. So I got to mile 120, and I spent 4 hours there. The first hour and a half to 2 hours was me trying to figure out, I guess the first hour was me trying to figure out if I want to drop or not.
Yeah.
Ben Light was there at the same time, I think. His wife was definitely there. I can't remember if Ben was there or not, but either Ben and his wife or his wife convinced me to let her work on me because she does work, massage therapy. And so she scraped me, and that was the first. And I guess that was probably the second most.
Yeah, I was going to
pain
say
I've
that
ever
thing
felt.
sucks.
Yeah, so she scraped me for a good 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
It was terrible. And that's where most of my crying took place throughout the triple.
You just were like, I'm ready to go. I just want to get out
of
here.
So after she scraped me, I took a nap, got up, thought about it some more. A good 4 hours have gone by, and I actually officially dropped. I gave them my bib, went and sat in the car, and at this point, we had a newborn baby.
Jeez.
And my wife, and she's a saint for doing this, but she crewed me for all three with a newborn baby.
Wow.
Which is so incredible. But she was changing his diaper and getting stuff ready for us to go home while I was just sitting in the car. And thankfully at this point, my phone had service, so I turned my phone out of airplane mode and just saw my phone blowing up with texts and posts of support from friends and family.
Man.
And so all that convinced me to try one more aid station, and thankfully, Candace was a little more lenient on, yeah. So she let me back in, and miraculously, between the next aid station, between those two aid stations, my IT band started to feel a little better. I was able to run and got to that next aid station and felt great and started pushing the pace, and I got to about mile one, so that was 120, and I got to about mile 175 feeling really good, and then the IT band flared up, but at that point I slogged for 60 miles on day one. I knew I could slog for another 25 miles.
Just a marathon.
Yeah, just a marathon. And the other cool thing about that, which is why I feel my wife is a saint, is the final aid station, just to, because I was still pretty down with how slow I was going, with how much pain I was in. Even though I was about to finish, I wasn't happy, and my wife could see that. So the final aid station, which I can't remember right, but I'm pretty sure it's 10 to 13 miles between the final aid station to the finish. Mm-hmm. My wife paced me with our newborn. She strapped him on her chest.
Holy cow.
She climbed. There's a good 3,000-foot climb. And
holy cow.
Yeah, she went with me to the end on that one, which was pretty amazing. And then, finished it feeling pretty grateful, but pretty miserable too.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt you, but real quick, if there's people out there that don't know, give an example. And when you said scraping, my foot, you probably know, started flexing because I had some done on my Achilles before. That was from my toes to my knee, basically. What's scraping?
So scraping is, from what I remember, it looks like a knife.
Yep.
It's metal.
Yep.
And wherever it hurts, the massage therapist, so Brittany Light at this moment, she would just take that metal-looking knife and just roll you. Not roll you, but like what you think would be rolling, but with something metal, and just feels like she's scraping chunks of bone off of your body.
So when I did it, it's like they have the metal ones, they have plastic ones, and they have different shaped ones. Like when I did it, they pulled out like this torture kit and rolled it out on the table, right? And first thing I did is clench my fist. I'm like, you're not going under my fingernails, right? This is bad. Started giving them all my personal PIN numbers, everything, Social Security. But it was, one looked like a shoehorn, I remember. One looked like the big, long knife-looking thing. Uh-huh. And, that's what it is. They just scrape. Like, you bruise. After, because someone's beating the crap out of you. But it's painful. It is absolutely brutal. And so when you said scraping, I'm like, wow, you're during a race. I'm like, oh, no thanks.
Yeah. Well, it works because I felt better after.
So when I hurt my Achilles, this was 8 years ago plus. I kept going to doctors, and doctors said, quit running. You don't run, it's bad for you, because my Achilles had a big knot and it was bad. And finally went to a doctor that was a runner, and he's like, you need A-stem. I'm like, oh, cool. A-stem to me sounds like they hook up electronics to you, right? And you just zap you. I go into the place, and it wasn't that. That was when they whipped the tools out. And one I did was A-stem. There's different versions of it. But so if you haven't had scraping done, do that. Yeah, like a double date weekend. Yeah.
Brittany Light is a good referral for that.
Go get some of that done. And then I think one of my favorite things of that whole story, though, I got goosebumps when you said, is when you turned your phone on and you had messages from friends and family. I just got goosebumps again saying it. But that, to me, is why I love probably this sport more than any, right? It's just the support you get. And people, the great thing is you have people that know what you're going through, right? Well, during a race, I'm not saying a 200. That's probably a smaller sample size. But there's people that have no clue, right, that have done a marathon. They've never done something that far. But they just know, hey, he wants to do something incredible, and they support you. And so in your head, you're kind of it almost sucks, right?
Yeah,
because you
it
sit
does.
there and you're reading those and you're like, oh man, I really wanted to stop.
Right.
And then you're reading this, you're the best, you're going to do it, you're awesome. You're like, gosh dang it. It's like,
just let me quit.
yeah, right? It's like, who are these enablers?
Yeah.
Right? But no, I mean, that just is so cool. And that's what I love is you see that from perfect strangers too. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
On a race course. You've never seen people and it's
Right.
completely incredible. So, all right. So you finished Tahoe, did well. Going into Moab, it was its first year, right? That you did. It was its first year of Moab. You've done 2 200s. What happened? It was 230 at that time as well, right? The first year? Was it still 240?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cheat. That's
No,
bad.
okay.
So 240 miles. You were gung-ho for that one? Or is that something you just were like, crap, I signed up for this already. I spent the money, right?
Right.
And people are texting me.
Right.
Change your phone number. How did you go into that one?
So when I finished Bigfoot, I felt a lot of relief because I was done. At the time, I didn't know I was going to do the other two. I finished Tahoe. I didn't feel any kind of relief because I knew another one was happening. So leading up to Moab, I wasn't stoked. So I just remembered this too. And also between Tahoe and Moab, without going too much into detail, I had some digestion issues.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I had diarrhea for 2 straight weeks.
Holy cow.
And I found out just before the race started what was causing it, but it was still too late where it affected me during the race. But I've never been a good sleeper, and someone told me about melatonin. So I was trying melatonin out and read the side effects of that, and some people experience diarrhea from melatonin. So aside from my misery of getting ready to run another 200 and having that issue, I wasn't stoked at all.
You're trying to find non-chafing Depends, right?
I went and bought anti-diarrheal pills that I was popping during the race, trying to plug myself up.
People take salt tabs and you're taking anti-poop pills.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't go into it super stoked, but strangely enough, the start of Moab and for most of the Moab is when I felt best. I felt the best I did between all 3.
Do you think it's because your body was kind of getting used to that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, because we've had Scott Jaime on the show before. He's a good friend of mine, and he was talking about he did the Colorado Trail FKT, had it for a while, and he said people think, but the further he got in, the more his body felt better. It was almost like his body had accepted what he was doing and adapted. So do you think that's what happened by the time you hit Moab?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too was I'm not good at stretching. I'm not good at recovery. And with my IT band flaring up so much in Tahoe, I spent a lot of time focusing on like rolling out. I went to the pool and did some laps. I went to Ben and Brittany Light's house a couple times and had her work on me some more. I guess I liked it enough during Tahoe to let her work on me some more.
They've got to have like a padded room in the basement or the neighbors would complain, man.
Right.
People screaming all the time.
Right. So I think between my body adapting and actually trying to recover between Tahoe and Moab, I think is what helped out for that.
And that one was 68 hours, and it's 40 miles longer. So time-wise, again, different course, obviously. Different
a lot less
location,
vert.
a lot less vert. Have you gone back before and thought to yourself 205 hours between 3? I mean, the time it is, like you said, it's a week. It's astronomical amounts of time, right? Quick hit, and this is the only thing I can compare it to. I once stayed up for 75 and a half hours doing a world record soccer game.
Wow.
Yeah, so we set the world record. I was 17, so I was a young dude, right? But that was forever. 75 hours, I remember being on my feet. Yeah, we had 5 minutes of sleep every half hour. So one time we played straight for 6 hours, so we could get a half hour's rest.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but then I look at 205 hours, and I'm like, holy crap. I mean, it wasn't consecutive, but just that block of time, your life, that doesn't count travel time, doesn't count training or recovery. I mean, when you go back and think about 2017 and all that, what do you draw from that?
A lot of gratitude, especially for my wife and helping out with that because I tried to convince her not to come pace me because we had a newborn baby and I was worried that mentally it would fatigue me, that I'd be between aid stations worrying about them because he was He was 5 months old when the first one started,
Dang.
and I was worried that like she was in a little Toyota Camry, and
Holy
specifically at Bigfoot, those are some pretty rugged dirt. Like Ben Light, he had, for those of you that know him, he has this huge yellow Jeep.
Yeah.
My wife's in a little Camry. So I was worried I would show up to an aid station and she wouldn't be there, so I'd panic, and so I tried to convince her not to go, but she talked me into it, and I can honestly say, at Bigfoot, I would have dropped when my stomach was hurting so much if she wasn't there. She helped out a ton, so a ton of gratitude that she would spend the same amount of time that I was out running by myself with a new, like,
Is she a runner at all?
Yeah, she does sprints, 5Ks, 10Ks, half
Okay.
marathon. She wants to get into ultras.
Okay.
But, you know, the 205 hours while I was running, she was
Driving,
dealing with a
taking care of
baby in a
baby.
car. So a lot of gratitude that she would actually support that and come along and fully support that. And then just, I'm pretty amazed that it actually happened, that between all the pain and the struggles and all the issues that came up, that it actually was all three a finish instead of Bigfoot and being done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like, it's, cause I mean, I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2017 when you did Triple Crown, that's to me when 200 started to gain some momentum. Like, I know before 2017.
Probably because of Courtney.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I know before 2017, you know, it's not like they weren't there.
Right.
But 2017 is when it gained momentum, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as like the public started seeing more, there was more people at the race, entries. So you kind of hit it right when it was going. So the first I heard your name was through these, and I thought, man, this dude's like a 200-mile beast, right? Like, this is this guy's wheelhouse. Like, some guys have certain wheelhouses.
Right.
Like, mine is like, I can tell you how many steps it takes me from my recliner to my fridge. That's my wheelhouse. And you're like the 200-mile guy. I was like, this is incredible. And Ben was obviously with you, kind of doing the same stuff. He did all three that year too,
Yep.
right?
Yep,
Okay.
he did.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so 2017's over. I'm going to ask you, I think we have some questions later, but between those three races where it's your first time doing 200s, how did you, because they were basically they're a month apart.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, like, what took place after Bigfoot, between Bigfoot and Tahoe to Moab?
Bigfoot and Tahoe, I didn't run at all. I did a lot of stationary biking, and that's about it. And like I said, I didn't do foam rolling or anything. I just did some bikes, and so if there's one thing that I would say I still need to learn how to figure out, it's recovery. I just signed on to have Jeff Browning coach me this year.
Oh, nice.
That just started probably 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
And that's probably the first thing that I've seen from him, is he really understands recovery, because
Nice.
you know, anybody that knows him, he does back-to-back races so much. And
He's an anomaly in the sport, I
Yeah.
think. He's getting better with age, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's not how it should work.
Right.
You know,
Right.
So,
yeah, I didn't understand. I still don't understand it too well right now. I feel like I'm learning quite a bit, but at that time I didn't know much at all about recovery. So just tried a stationary bike when I felt like it. And between Tahoe and Moab, though, I did do a lot of swimming. And that was mainly because I didn't know if an IT band issue would flare up more on a bike.
yeah.
Like, I didn't know anything, so I just did a lot of swimming between Tahoe and Moab, but I did no running. I know that Ben Light did some running, and I know that a lot of the other people that did the triple ran, but to me, recovery was just not running.
That's not running to me either. Okay, so fast forward, we're in 2019. I just mentioned you came off the Antelope Island 100. You won that race. So you dropped down to the 100-mile race, which means all that means, though, is you have to go faster, though, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think some people, like, I've talked to different people, like, man, I'm built for 200 because I'm just slow and steady. When I get into like a 50, I'm just too slow, right? So this year, you've done that. You are in a race some people may have heard of, Western States 100. It happens in June.
Yeah.
It's getting bigger, more popular. And then right now, and we'll get into it, the plan is the Triple Crown again.
Yeah.
That's the plan right now.
Yeah.
So we'll just focus on the first one. This is your first go at Western States.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
What's that like?
I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. I was focusing a lot on Antelope Island. But I've thought about it a lot since Antelope Island, and I'm pretty stoked. A big reason I signed up to have Jeff Browning coach me is I feel if the stars align and if I have a perfect day, I feel that top 10's not out of the question.
Nice.
Obviously, everything would have to go perfect, and I feel like Jeff Browning has a lot to offer and something like that. So, that's the goal. Obviously, there's a factor in that race that hurts a lot of people, and I'm afraid that I'm going to be one of those, is the heat.
Yeah.
I'm terrible in the heat, so I know I'm going to do a lot of heat training for it. I don't know how that's going to work out, but I'm hoping Jeff has some good pointers on how to heat train for it.
Well, I mean, we talk about it on the show a lot because there's a lot of coaches out there. But I think when you have a coach like Jeff who's done that race and had success, it just is a huge benefit, right? Because he knows the sections, he knows the aid stations, he knows the heat, he knows the twists and turns. So that definitely is going to help, especially since you've never ran the race.
Right.
And I love your attitude, like you think, top 10's not out of the question, because that field's stacked, right? Mm-hmm. Both men's and women's side. And I keep saying on the podcast, it's not going to, women are going to start cracking that top 10 and higher, right? I mean, it's going to happen. But I like the attitude and the mindset. Just simply, man, for me, it goes back to breaking your back. I mean, that sets people back sometimes forever, right? Mm-hmm. Not just the injury itself, but the mental side of it. And, I don't say pity, but I know people, and myself included, been hurt, and you feel bad, and you just don't get back into it. But you were the opposite, so you've got that ultra mindset. So heading into Western, man, it's got to be cool, though. I mean, that's history. It's hard to get into, and that's your next thing, right? I mean, you don't have anything before that, probably, right?
Nope.
Okay,
nope.
So it's just training
it's
straight
all focus
through.
For that, yeah.
Okay, and then after that, we talked about it. You're registered, right, for the Triple Crown.
Yes.
But you're busy.
Yes.
Right? So there's this thing that some of us talk about sometimes in ultra running. It's called life, right?
Yeah.
It sometimes gets in the way of running. So you're tentative now for the Triple Crown because you're going to be, Western States.
Yeah.
And you want to focus on that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a big deal. After Western States, then what's going on?
So, ultra sponsors Western States, Mount Marathon in Alaska, and Hard Rock, and those are all within a month of each other, and they're some of our biggest events. So with those being bigger events in my role with the company, I travel to those events to work. So I have Western States, and literally the day after I would finish Western States, I'd hop on a plane to go to Alaska for Mount Marathon.
Wow.
Then we'd get back from that, and just over a week and a half after that, I would drive out to Silverton for Hard Rock. And then a day or two after I would get back from Hard Rock is when my wife and son and I will be going to Denver, moving for the company. So this was actually a discussion we had just yesterday. I was for sure doing the triple until yesterday. Now I'm unsure what I want to do, but it doesn't seem nice, and I mean that's probably a poor term to use because there's a lot of things in ultra running that aren't nice.
Yeah.
There's inconveniences to the sport sometimes, but it seems a little more difficult than what we'd like to be able to, do all that travel, move to Denver, get there, unpack, barely get settled in if we get settled in, and then hop in a car and drive to Washington to begin the Triple Crown. It doesn't seem like with the move and everything that it might not be the best time to go for it again.
Would you consider doing any of them, or if you don't do the first, you won't do any of them?
So if I don't do the triple, my plan is to do Run Rabbit in September. Okay. And then I would do Moab 240 in October.
So there's a plan B to where you're still going to be getting out there. And if you don't do the triple this year, was that something you'd want to do next year?
Next year, yeah, for sure.
You like it that much?
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Well,
just making sure.
The other thing with that, too, is I feel that, those times look consistent, and I feel that with everything that went wrong, that, I've had, if I do it this year, I'll have 2 years of strength and 2 years that I've worked on everything with running, and I feel that I could go into that and really improve on my time. So I'm just kind of similar to when I did Tahoe and Moab, curious to know what I could do if I dial my nutrition in. I'm curious to know what I could do in all three if I have a little bit more experience under my belt.
Isn't that the nasty part of ultra running, right? It really is. It's like
not one and done.
You do something, you're like, if I wouldn't have stopped to tie my shoe, I could have went faster. You know what I mean? It's all that you think. You start thinking. It's like you finish, you're happy that you finished, but then you're like, it wasn't as good as I thought. You're sore, and then your mind starts wandering, right? It's like, if I stayed too long at that aid station, what if I wouldn't have done this? And so that's the nasty part to me of trail running and ultra running, because there's so many races out there. There's so many I still want to do, but then in the back of my mind, it's like, I know I can do better at Vaquero. I know I can do better at that race, right? And you're challenging instead of going, all right, I'm going to give that one a rest. I'm going to go over here and do something I've never done before. You're like,
right.
Nope, I know that day,
But there are the times too, though, that, the Zion 100, I've done that one 3 times now, and this year I can honestly say that that race was perfect for me, and I can finally move on from Zion. So there are opportunities to. But I totally.
I think those are fewer and farther between. Is when you nail it and you're like, that's good. Now I'm moving on. Because then you see people like, after my 10th Wasatch 100, I'm done with Wasatch. And I get those things, but I think there's so much of that. I remember one year I ran Wasatch. I went home. It was probably a week later, but then I tallied all my aid station time together, and I'm like, holy crap, dude. That was like 3 hours or whatever. I'm like, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's like my time would have looked way better. So I can see it doing well. So I don't know the numbers, but is there a lot more people every year signing up for the Triple Crown?
Yeah. So the year that I did it was its first year being the Triple Crown, and so last year was the second year, and when we did it, there was 24 to 30 that signed up for it. Yeah. And then this past year, I'm pretty sure it was over 40.
How many finished, though, the year you did it? So if, say, 24 registered, how many
I'm pretty sure it was 13.
Really?
It was 13 or 14.
Close to half, 50%-ish or whatever.
I don't remember how many. It was higher this past year, but I'm not sure the exact number for finishers.
That's crazy. So some other stuff here. So we talk about, you've talked about your wife and all the support she's given you. You talk about your job, all these races. How do you balance all this stuff? Because you are not a sponsored paid athlete, right? You have a job, right, that you work and you get money back, but you earn it, right? And then you have a family, you have a wife, you have a son, and then you have running. How do you balance all that stuff, with all those combined?
Being flexible, for sure. And for me, it's getting up really earlier than I would like to get my running in done before they wake up. So a typical work day for me is waking up about 5 o'clock and slogging out of bed, putting my clothes on, getting my dog ready, and out the door by 5:30, finishing up by 7, get to work by 8, and then get home by about 5. And
unless you have a podcast,
then
you're later.
Get home by 6.
Yeah.
And then, so get home at 5, and from 5 to 10 is my wife and son time.
That's good.
And then, obviously, being super, everybody jokes, like I've seen those articles about don't date a trail runner, don't marry a trail runner, because your vacation becomes a running vacation. And so it's like, obviously I'm sure all of us do that. I do that, but also recognizing and being sensitive that this is a family vacation, and you can still go for your run before everybody wakes up, but you're not going to plan a race around it. And, if you have a family, like this past weekend, not this past weekend, but a few weekends ago, we had a plan to do something with my wife's family. So I used some PTO and did my long run on Friday, and then woke up early and did a normal run on Saturday. And then we had all day on Saturday to spend time together. So just being sensitive to your family's needs, and if you're sensitive to their needs, they'll be sensitive to your needs, and they're typically more sensitive to your needs because they're flexible. And
does it help on your end, or is it harder where you travel for your job to a race, right? So say you're going to Hard Rock. I know you're not running that race, but you can maybe get some training in. But do you schedule hey, I got to go to this race, I might as well run it while I'm there? Or is it so work focused you don't have time for it? You know what I mean? Or is it both? Combination?
It's both. Like the road races, it's a little harder to get training in just because I hate the road. I hate flat. Like every year I go to the New York City Marathon, and I try to get an hour and a half, 10 miles a day or so when I'm here in Utah. But like when I go to somewhere like that, it's, if I can get 5 or 6 miles in, I'll be happy. But yeah, like a lot of the races we sponsor, I'll usually end up doing a couple of those each year. Just because like you said, I'm already going to be there and it just works. And, but I try to do a mix of all of it.
Gotcha. So what about your back? Now that you're running, do you notice it's got stuff in there now, like you said before? Does it give you any type of problems, like when you first get up after a race, or is it for you, it's just, this is what I got?
So this will be a little plug that I have for Ultra.
Okay.
If I'm allowed to do
that.
No,
go for it. We're a nonpartisan podcast.
Perfect.
Yep.
So when I started doing my Ultras, I was an ambassador for another brand.
Okay.
And during all the Ultras that I did, I would always have to stop and stretch my back every couple hours. My back would hurt so much, so I would find a part on the trail and kind of go off the trail and lay down in the weeds, and I'd do that stretch where you like pull your knee to your chest. So it'd stretch my back out, and later on in the race, if it's a longer race, I'd have to do that more often, but I'd have to stop and stretch my back quite a bit. And then ever since I started running in Ultras, I haven't had to do that once, even during any of the 200s.
Nice.
So during the race, I don't really feel it. After the race, the next morning, I can, depending on how long it is, I can feel it. I can really feel it. But like in my day-to-day, like a normal hour and a half, 2 hour run, I don't feel it. And ironically, maybe not ironically, but I tend to feel it more when I skip a day over when I do a day.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hear a lot of people talk about, like, with knees, everything else. It's like, if I stop running, my knees hurt.
Yeah.
When I run, they're fine. What about weather? Does weather affect it? Like when it gets really cold? I know some people say, like my mom, she broke her arm really bad once, and when it got cold, her arm would ache. Does that happen with your back?
I think so. I'm gonna have to pay attention to it more. But the Antelope Island 100 a week ago, like it was pretty bad weather. It was rainy and stuff, and I noticed that my back was hurting more during that. I don't know if it was because of the mud, the slipping and sliding from the mud, or if it was the cold weather. But it's something that I took note to pay attention to more. But it must not be too significant if I've never really felt like it. I feel fine in the winter.
Like you can't predict storms?
Right. No,
okay.
I can't.
All right. Well, that would be super cool.
Right.
If you could, then you wouldn't need a barometer on your watch. You're like, here comes a cold front. Right. This is going to bring 4 to 6 inches of rain. So I've got a few questions for you. We have some Patreon users that help support the podcast, and I let them know who's coming on beforehand, and they ask questions. So I got a few questions for you.
Okay.
These are not from me. These are from our very educated Patreon followers. First one says, Michael is doing at least 800 miles in races this year. So that's when you did Antelope. We had Antelope planned. You had Western State. I forget that one. It's so small. Western, and then the Triple Crown.
And Desert Solstice.
So you have all that planned. What do you do between races when you're not running?
So this is what Jeff's helping me out with right now.
Okay.
So typically so after Antelope Island, I didn't run at all.
Okay.
For a week.
Okay.
And Jeff, and this is something similar to what I used to do, but now it's a lot more structured. But took the day off after the race, and then come Monday, started doing some biking, some elliptical work, slow hikes with the family, some strength training periodically throughout the week, and a week later, just a light, slower run. And it's been over a week now, and this week it's full on running every day again. But he has me doing like half the mileage that I would do. So still a recovery week, and I'm pretty sure it says that on the plan that he has for me. It's still a recovery week. But it's just running every day now, just half the distance.
So still like an active recovery.
Yeah, active
though.
recovery.
So you're not like, what about, and I think the next question, what do you do for recovery? Like, do you stretch more now? That's another question we have. Do you have active type recovery, swimming, bike? I mean, you talk about biking, but is there anything else you do for recovery? Do you take anything? like
Yeah.
supplement wise?
Yeah, so I do stretch now.
Okay.
That's part of the plan Jeff has for me. So every night before bed, foam roll, stretch. I take gnarly BCAAs almost every day to help with that recovery. And then every morning, and this goes back to the people doing the low carb, high fat, losing more salt, I take salt water in the morning. Yeah.
You drink salt water?
I drink salt water.
Good.
Jeff's recommendation.
Come on.
But I also mix that with it's called Natural Calm, and it's a magnesium supplement. So BCAAs, protein, and magnesium to help with recovery.
Okay. Now, magnesium can also aid in using the bathroom a lot too, right? Do you have that effect on you, or do you have like the amount of dose you take to where you're okay?
Yeah, I take the amount that on this supplement. It like tells you to start out at a certain one and just work up and then back up if you need to. So
because your story, I ran Wasatch, and this was funny because it was my best year. I went under 30 hours, but I was running a race and I was taking a supplement from a nutrition company. I'm not going to say I can say what it was. It was from Hammer, and I can't remember what it was called though, but it was like something that you take to keep your legs going. There's a name for it. I just don't want to remember it. Anyway, I thought I had the golden ticket with these things, right? I'm like, this is like cheating. And so it said to take some, and I took the dosage, but I was running 100. I'm like, man, if I keep taking these during the race, my legs aren't going to get tired. About mile 30, my legs still weren't tired, but I was in the bushes. I think I counted 13 times from mile 40 to the finish.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough that my pacers, one was have some medical background, and man, I had female pacers, and I'm just like, hold on, and I'd be in the bushes for a minute, right, and then I'd jump right back out, right, and it was kind of making me upset, and I'm like, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, what are you taking? I'm like, da-da-da, and I'm taking these, and she goes, Eric, I'm like, what? And she goes, that makes you poop. You shouldn't take those. But I'd already had probably 10 to 12 pills.
So you were done.
Yeah, I mean, it was like there was no stopping, and I'm okay.
Right.
This was like going to be 2 more days, right? And I was like so mad. I threw the bottle away when I got home. But every time I hear magnesium, I get nervous.
That's what you think of?
Yeah, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
That brings it back. So that's cool that you have these, that you've got it dialed in, though, with the gnarly and the salt water. So it's working out pretty well for you, do you feel like, though?
Yeah. And then something Jeff has helped me out with, too, is I kind of took the low-carb, high-fat thing to the extreme, where I took in too little carbs.
Okay.
And so something Jeff's been helping me with is taking more carbs based off of when I run and stuff. And so this past week, even though I wasn't running, I upped my carbs a little bit. And, today I went for a run, and I feel like it's the best I've ever felt this close after a 100-mile race. So
does that excite you?
Yeah.
I mean, knowing what you've done in the past, knowing what you want to do, but also starting to dial it in and have someone like Jeff in your corner with are you getting more excited to go run? Are you excited to see like what you were going to do at Antelope? I mean, does that get it going? Motivation too, in a way.
Yeah, just like when I was sending you some stuff last night, just seeing all that and realizing how things have really seemed to be working out ever since I've started doing the low carb, high fat thing. And now that I have Jeff like fully coaching me, like I feel like it can just keep going up, and it does excite me.
That's awesome. All right, next question from one of our Patreon users or helpers. Favorite Triple Crown race and why? And then they want you to rank them in order that you like them.
Ooh, was that taking the pain factor out? Because if we're going to go on the pain factor, then... out of the 3 courses, what one is your favorite course? Tahoe.
Tahoe is?
Yeah.
Why?
I love that the majority of that race you can see the lake.
Okay.
And it can get, like, depending on where your headspace is, it can get a little demoralizing to be able to see where you're at and see where you still need to go.
Yeah.
Because it's a big lake, and like you can see that you have a long ways to go, but at the same time it's cool to like be the second day in and look back and be like, okay, that's where I was a day and a half ago, and I'm already here. Like there's
I'm still trying to process this. That's where I was a day and a half ago. I'm still on foot.
Well, unless you're Courtney, it's you can't keep up with her speed, and Kyle Curtin. But so yeah, Tahoe, I loved being able to see the lake. for the majority of it, and then just for crew too, it's probably the easiest crewable race.
And what's the elevation in that one? Is it more or less than Bigfoot?
It's less, but it's only like 2,000 less.
Okay, so not much when you're talking that distance.
Yeah.
What's number 2?
Bigfoot. Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm guessing 3's Moab?
Yes.
If I had to rank them just in what I like, I would rank Bigfoot 1, Tahoe 2, and Moab 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a sand or desert
No,
guy.
sand,
Man. So everybody's like, I mean, first of all, I've never done one, and it's not really on the list. Well, I do have an announcement to make. But anyway,
Really?
That's interesting. So that would be your choice. All right. Do you cross-train during your training, and do you cross-train for recovery? This is another question from another user. So do you cross-train in your training schedule? Does Jeff have you doing other stuff besides running?
By cross-train,
Like bike, swim, weights,
so
yoga?
I bike to work on occasion.
Okay.
So I would say the things that I noticed. So when I first started doing ultras, I had stomach issues. I bonked. I just felt like I always had an issue during a race. And when all that turned around, I know it was for 2 things. Is because I started doing the low carb, high fat thing, and then I started to strength train. And so Jeff does have me strength training. It's a little bit different than how I've been doing it over the past couple of years, where I would just do more of like the typical 3 sets of 10 curls, dips, pull-ups, whatever. And his strength training is more focused on like full body, get your heart rate going workouts. So like forward lunge, tricep press for a certain amount of time, burpees, air squats, air jumps. So Jeff has me doing a lot more stuff like that, and I can tell that that's helping.
Nice.
So I do that 3 times a week. I strength train 3 times a week. And then now that the weather's getting better, I'll bike to work the 2 days that I don't strength train.
Okay.
And I don't consider that a workout. I just go at a comfortable pace and just get my legs going.
Nice.
But no, I don't swim. I don't like do a bike workout. It's just running and strength training. And I do that during training, while I'm doing high volume running. And then during recovery, I still do the strength training. I do a little bit more of the biking and elliptical and all that. And then just the strength training that I do during recovery is like 70% effort, a little lighter weight, but still something that's getting the legs moving and the muscles
That's good.
growing. Yeah.
No, that's really good. I mean, it's like you say, you're dialing it in, you're tweaking it a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Like he's got you doing a little bit different, and that's where you're seeing some benefits. So I think that's important when you want to sometimes take it to that next level, is maybe find a coach, right?
Yeah, and I always kind of mocked that. Well, I didn't mock it, but like whenever I'd hear people would have coaches, I'd just be like, just go out and run. Yeah. Like, I don't know why you get a coach, but now I can totally understand.
And the people I've talked to that have had coaches loved it.
Yeah.
You know, for lots of reasons. One, it's like, okay, now there's a structured workout. Now I don't have to think, and now I know it's going to help, and they see improvements. But it's also accountability for some, right?
Definitely.
And so it's like, well, I didn't feel like running, but, you know, so-and-so had me out running, and I had to do this. So it kind of holds them more accountable. And we, you know, like you've talked about even on this podcast, kind of seeing what you're capable of, right? And seeing what you can do. So when you take it to that next level, if you have the time, the money, the want to, right? I mean, it's just a good option just to kind of see what you can do. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of good coaches out there too, and I think that helps. Especially like you said, I think one thing I like about Jeff is where you can dial in, if you want to, that nutrition side with him as well. You know, where he's, again, I mean, you don't have to believe in keto or what he does, but the proof's kind of in the pudding with him, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's hard to question it. Right. Now, it's not for everybody, right? It's fine. But when you're looking at it, you're like, well, it seems to be working. You know, there's something going on there. Well, cool. This has been awesome. It's super fun to have you finally on the show. I know we've tried to get you on before. But I'm really glad that we got you before you headed out of town, so we could do it in person. My announcement was I'm going to run Bigfoot 200 this year.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. It's April Fool's.
Oh my gosh.
See, right? I haven't done an April Fool's joke all day.
You totally got me.
It is. So it is April 1st. That's why I announced it. I keep telling my listeners, I don't get the 200. I'm interested just on how the whole facet of them. But when I watch it on Twitter, I'm like, I'm tired.
It's like
right?
you and I were just talking about it at Antelope Island. I was like, yes, he's doing it.
No. Yeah, that's a lot. We'll see how it goes, but no, I'm super glad you came on the show. I loved your story. I think there's a lot of good stuff that everybody can take from it. I mean, from the balance to jumping out of a comfort zone to testing yourself, and I still think, stories like that where you did, a broken back, right? I mean, the back is the pinnacle of your body. Right?
Yeah.
And so when that's out of alignment in any way or injured, I mean, it's super cool to see what you're doing. I know people injury based, anything in life, sometimes people use as an excuse or a crutch. And it's super awesome to see what you have, breaking back, and it's like, it's like, is what it is. And you just kind of just crush through it and doing some super cool things, man. It's awesome. And your mindset going as well is super, encouraging for people as well. So thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Good luck at Western. That's super. I'm excited for that. And then just good luck with your move. I mean, the life stuff, right? Because races will be there in 2020, right? But you got to get your family settled and moved into Denver. But I know Utah's going to miss you, and hope to see you around the race scene a little bit between now and then. But thanks
Bigfoot.
again. Bigfoot, yeah, I will not be there.
See you there. No,
I don't even I could go watch one, man. I'd like to volunteer at an aid station, though. I really would, even though you have some downtime. But the aid station stuff blows me away there, and to see how they're organized in person, because I know it's just a production in itself. So. Thanks for being on the podcast. We'll definitely catch up to you later after everything's settled down, just to see where you're at and what you're doing. But good luck the rest of the year, and good luck with your move.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners podcast. I'd like to thank Mike McKnight for taking the time to join us today, and wish him luck through his Western States 100 training, the Western States 100, and his relocation to beautiful Colorado. I also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Trail Manners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. There's a few items left in the store page, or you can hit us up on the contact page. Let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear, or if you would like to be on the show. Again, we'd love your support via Patreon at patreon.com/trailmanners. Until next time, this is Eric Manning reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.